This much-awaited session is between two media heavyweights, Veer Sanghvi and Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, as they speak on breaking barriers in media coverage on the very pertinent topic of the fine line between news and abuse.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about the fine line between news and abuse. Before we actually get started, we thought we'd just a quick show of hands. This is about television, really. How many of you feel that there is an element of abuse in the news today? Wow. Okay, so the next question which is interesting is, and those of you who actually think that this is not a bad thing, show of hands, those of you who think that this is not a bad thing. Okay, so this room is basically completely different.
If you call it abuse, who's going to say it's a good thing?
I need to learn to frame my question. Obviously, that's why maybe we should be in a different place. But so obviously, this audience is very, very different from those that are watching.
That's not the question. Ask them how many of them watch Times Now.
So let's ask that question then. How many people here actually watch Times Now? And how many of you guys started watching Times Now after Arnab kind of left?
That's your answer.
I think that is why the question.
That's what you wanted to ask, but I'll just ask it directly.
No, I was actually not going to go down that path. We're going to try.
No, but I mean, if you mean that television news is about opinion and views and all of that, yes, I think all of us would agree it's less about the news now than it is about opinion and views. But equally, I think viewers share a responsibility because that's what they want to watch.
That's right. So that's
So
what
I think what Veer is making very, very clear, that this evening he's not going to save the nation for you.
Absolutely. Nor does the nation want to know.
So let me ask the first question to Veer.
Yeah.
Veer, now that we know the pulse of the audience, tell me, is neutral journalism dead?
No, it isn't. I think people watch television for different reasons. You did this long introduction of Paranjoy, but you didn't mention that he was one of the founders of the Indian talk show format on CNBC. You did that show for how long?
6 years. I'm a more evolved human being now.
right.
I'm only a part-time idiot on the idiot box.
So, I mean, there he used to interview people, and where if he had an opinion, he would express it as an opinion, but he didn't hector people, he didn't abuse people, he didn't pass off his opinions as being genuine news. The concern now is that the distinction between opinion and news has eroded.
But is that show on?
No.
So
they don't like my face
is
anymore.
journalism dead?
6 years.
Not at all.
Every night, every weeknight for
That's
6
right.
years.
I've grown my beard.
You had some 1400 episodes, right?
Yeah, kind of.
So you
And
knew,
then,
right?
and then after that, for some more time on Lok Sabha television. To add to what Veer is saying, this whole notion of what is objective, what is biased, these are very difficult to define. I mean, people have written entire books. I mean, philosophers have written books on what is objective and what is not. Just to add to what he was saying, even when you report facts, after an hour of conversation, if all of you are asked to write a summary of what all four of us said in 400 words, everybody's article would be different. Why? Because we pick and choose the facts. What do we highlight? What do we ignore? What comes first? What comes later? All of these determine our bias. So in that sense, one at a purely philosophical level, even when you report facts, there is an element of bias that comes in.
Why has the news really shifted into becoming a gladiator sport? You turn it on, and barring the odd TV channel which still continues with, let's say, what is old school in that sense, right? Why has this suddenly become a gladiator sport? Is it because people are just getting the news on their phones on an update and therefore want to come and see entertainment? What's really going on? What's the behind-the-scenes story?
Okay. Shall I start?
You start.
All right.
I think we broadly have the same views.
Yeah. This line between news and entertainment has become increasingly blurred. This has become this kind of adversarial, tu meme kind of thing. Why? Because this kind of television is easier and cheaper to produce. You're just calling two people or 8 people, there are 8 boxes, and they're usually all speaking simultaneously, so you can't hear what anybody is saying. Right. So it's good entertainment. You know, the question is, do you like to watch that every evening, or would you like mother-in-law or daughter-in-law emotionally blackmail each other? You know, you have really a choice between these two. So you use your remote and you decide, I want this kind of entertainment or that kind of entertainment. Let me put it this way. Firstly, this kind of television is not unique to India. It's happened at in different parts of the world at different points of time. A, it's easier to produce. A, you cater to this very mythical animal called TRP, television rating points. And just give me half a minute and I'll tell you, you know, we have a country of 1.25 billion people, 1.3 billion people. There are at least 150 million households with television sets. Each television set is watched by 4 or 5. So, I mean, half the country is watching television. How many watch English television? Short proportion, a very small proportion. How many watch Times Now out of that? An even smaller proportion. Yet, my dear friend, Mr. Goswami says the nation wants to know. Fine, no problem. That's his. Secondly, you know, the way you measure television ratings or viewership patterns is very flawed. It's inadequate. It's corrupt. So all these things result in, you know, you're chasing the big bucks. You're grabbing the eyeball. This is relatively easier to produce. It's far more expensive to send a bunch of reporters to travel across the country, to meet up with large numbers of people and put together a half-an-hour program. So that's a somewhat long answer to your question. Veer, you'd like to add?
I actually have nothing to add because he said it all. Yeah? Ditto. I mean, absolutely right. If you go to a television studio of many television channels, you will see the hardest working desks in India, because all television on that channel just consists of people sitting around that desk and shouting at each other. No money is spent sending people into the field. No money is spent on reporting stories. No money is spent on scripts. It's essentially, I mean, I tried this as an experiment. I see Barkha sitting here, so her show is probably an exception. I want to say right off now. But you take the average news broadcast on Indian television, you go to your settings, you turn the brightness to black, right? And just listen to the voices. You will find you lose nothing, because there is nothing in the visuals. It's only the voices. So what this generation of journalists has done, and Paranjoy and I being old men who were on television earlier can say this, is they have taken an essentially visual medium and turned this into talk radio. And it has all the values of shock radio in the United States, where you have shock jocks and all that, where people have opinions which are loudly expressed, they are bigoted, they are aggressive. If you see, as Paranjoy correctly said, what happens in the United States, what we are doing is not that different.